Hey guys, just wanted to give you an update on the Model T that I'm working on. I've got a 1925 Model T Roadster that I've been tinkering on for the past, I don't know, about 3 years. It came out of Alva, Oklahoma, and it was a full-blown Roadster, all the fenders and all that good stuff when I got it. And I am turning it into what they call a go job, or a kind of a speedster type restoration. And it's been sitting in the same state for about a year now, because I just have had other things, coming up. And I just got all the wiring done this morning, which thankfully I had a really good wiring diagram. Lincoln Publishing Company, looks like. So a really nice wiring diagram that showed me kind of where everything went. Good thing about it was I had most of the wiring harnesses that I purchased online a few years ago. And so I just, it was amazing because all the color coding and everything is really exactly what it's supposed to be. So it was really easy to put together. Main thing I ran into was just not having a ground strap and a starter wire and those kind of things. And so I had to run up to O'Reilly's and get that. But I've got it all, I think, wired up. I've got to make sure my battery is charged. It's a 6-volt system. And so I had it on the trickle charger most of the morning, but it just didn't seem to have enough boost to it. So probably gonna have to put it on the trickle charger, because it's an Optima red top that I've had. I think I bought it in 15. So it's been sitting around here in the shop for 3 years now. With no charge on it. So I'm probably gonna have to charge it overnight. I've never had fuel in it before. That's an interesting sight because the fuel tank is directly underneath where you sit. Back in the days, safety was never really a concern, I guess. It makes me very nervous, to tell you the truth, because the exhaust pipe, if you can see it down there, it's running straight out of the header on the back of that manifold. It runs directly next to the petcock, which is at the bottom of the fuel tank. So if you have any leaks whatsoever, I mean, you're literally like that far away from the exhaust pipe. It's, I guess, this way they designed it, and it is what it is, but it's still a little scary. Same thing with, if you see that copper line down there, that is the fuel line itself, or that brass line. And again, if you sprung a leak in that or something, you're literally right next to the exhaust manifold. What I'm dealing with right now is just fuel leaks. I just put about a gallon of fuel in the system. Got a little bit of a leak on my petcock itself. I'm gonna have to figure out that exactly where it's leaking. There's about 3 places it can be leaking from. And then when I turned the petcock on, I finally was getting fuel down to the carburetor, because it's a gravity feed system. And so it goes down to this carburetor right here. It's what they call it. I think it's what they call an updraft carburetor, because obviously the fuel is coming in here and being drafted up into the combustion chamber. I think in later models they had the downdraft system, so the carburetor would actually be up here. And in fact, in kind of doing some research for this car, I saw that a lot of the hop-ups, or the kind of the hot rod thing to do back in the day, was put a downdraft, which was, I think, a Model A invention or innovation. That was kind of one of the hop-up items they did. Changed out the head, of course. There were some overhead valve heads and so forth that you could get that would hop it up. Some of the ones got a little bit more creative. This is a stock exhaust manifold, so they would actually come off of here and build a true kind of like a header system, and then come outside the frame and go all the way back in a bigger pipe. Back when I first started it, the goal was, if I was a guy in 1925 and had this car and wanted to go racing, what could I do to it with 1925 technology, 1925 parts? So anything later than 1925, I tried to stay away from. Obviously, there are some aftermarket parts on here. The thermometer for I forgot what they call those, but the thermometer for the radiator. Obviously, it's got some later model tires on it. But I tried to stay as true and correct to 1925. You know, back in the day, I wanted to get the best, most up-to-date technology, the fastest thing I can get. Didn't have a lot of money, and so I took, you know, Dad's two-door, or not even two-door, Roadster, one-door Roadster, and took off all the fenders, the running boards, splash guards, anything that gave more weight to it, took the top off. One thing I have not done yet, and I just don't know if I'm going to do it because it's almost sacrilegious to cut up good parts, is I was going to chop this windshield, obviously, to where it would be halved. And so just basically chop it right there, just use the lower glass here as the windshield, and kind of give it a little bit more sportier look. I just hate to do that. I hate to tear up a good piece of 1925 windshield frame, just to kind of make it look cooler. So in this case, again, the theme behind it was, I stole Dad's car. I'm gonna go racing in a few weeks. What can I do to it to make it go faster, and then hopefully not get my butt kicked because I stole Dad's car, and so I can put it all kind of back together when I'm done. That was the gist. That was the theme. That was the kind of the build spectrum that I was trying to stay in. And I think I stayed pretty true to that. Guys, I'm sorry if I'm wrong on this. I'm trying to be right. I'm not an expert on this. I just tinker around with things, and I've got a lot of family members and friends that are kind of into this deal, so I'll ask them to be sure. But one of the things that seemed to be an upgrade or kind of an aftermarket thing in the day was this water pump. And so that piece right there, again, I don't know. If I remember right, I think it was just a gravity-fed system. I mean, it was just basically, the hose coming in the top there, hose going into the bottom, or right here on the side. All right, sorry about that, guys. I had to cut it there for a second because the air compressor came on. But back in the day, it's my understanding, and obviously I can research this a little bit more, but essentially you had, the two system, the intake of the radiator. I say that's the radiator. I think that is. The intake side, and then the outtake side or outflow side. And I think back, I don't know. Again, I don't think this is a stock factory item. This water pump, it's a mechanical water pump. So you can see it hooked on to this area right here where I would imagine the previous pipe and hose would have hooked onto, kind of like a manifold for the water system to circulate through the engine. But they came back and put this mechanical system on, so you had to get a little bit bigger belt. It went around the fan belt and then obviously around the crankshaft down there, and then came over here and actually went around this. And this is just a shaft that goes in here. And I imagine, I don't know what's inside here, but I think it's just, I would assume a propeller or impeller. And so it was a mechanical water pump that would pump fluids and stuff through the jacket without having to go through the gravity system. And again, I just don't know. I'm just not well versed on, did it come in here and I guess, go through the whole, intake or the head and circulate around and cool it down, and then come out here and then go down, and then kind of just keep this cycle going, from basically a gravity or I don't want to say steam, but a hot water type system where the heat rises. I, again, don't know that. I'm just kind of guessing from that standpoint. But back in the day, I think coming off the line, that's what it was. And so a lot of guys would come in here and put this water pump, this mechanical water pump on to obviously increase the cooling flow for this. So I've got there's a bunch of different styles of water pumps. And so again, that's what kind of leads me to believe that this was an aftermarket system. Because I've got a whole box right over here of just water pumps, all different kinds, different styles, designs. This one actually came on this block, so I didn't put it on myself, but I've probably got like 6 different kinds of water pumps. And My father-in-law, Merle, he's into Model A's and Model T's. He could go through there and tell you exactly what each water pump was used for and which one's the best one and what year it came out and all that good stuff. He's just an amazing wealth of technology or information on this thing. But this is the way it came. So it was just kind of one of those things where I felt the theme of the project should be, what would I do? Again, stole Dad's Roadster, wanted to go racing, and just did everything I could in my garage with probably, my one little light bulb, or probably not even electricity out at the farm in the barn at this point. And just what could I have done to make it go faster and go racing with it. Now, one of the things that obviously in this little imagination story is I painted a 5 on the front. Dad would probably be pretty mad at me for doing that, especially if this was his get around during the week. He would not like that too much, but thought it from a standpoint of, hey, I could always paint it black again, not a big deal. So again, tried to keep it very, very minimalist, without any kind of major go fast items that I would have ordered, through the catalog or stole off of another car. As you got into later model years, the 26, 27, 28, 29, you started getting into the Model A era. Obviously a bigger displacement engine, better transmissions, better rear ends, better suspension, those kind of things. And so that's really, when things started getting customized a lot. Obviously today, the 32 Roadster is just, one of the iconic hot rods, even today. So this is, 7 years before that. What could I do? Not a lot of money, just wanted to go racing. So that's the theme of the build. Again, I've got a little bit of a fuel leak going on out of the petcock. I got to figure that out. Maybe it's just a gasket issue. Other than that, I think it's ready to start. I've got all the wiring hooked up. I've got everything wired except for the headlights. I've got the wiring down to the headlights. I just haven't actually put the headlights on. I bought new filaments and bulbs, and I restored the actual buckets themselves and the glass and all that stuff. So I'll put those on hopefully in the next week or two. I'm trying to think what else. I think that's it. I wired up the backlight in the back. Where the tail light is in the spare tire. You can kind of see in here, I've got that red top on its side. Usually the 6-volt battery, as you know, 6-volt batteries are really big and very heavy. And so it went down in that carrier right there below the trunk deck. I just put a little red top in here, 6 volts, a lot smaller. Good thing about Optimas, you can mount them anywhere. You can mount them upside down, sideways, it doesn't matter. I think they say it's not good to mount them upside down, but you can mount them in any direction that you want inside a vehicle. So that's why I went with that red top, and obviously it's a lot lighter and smaller. But other than that, I lubed it all up, put grease on all the zerts, and just made sure things are ready to go. I've got to put fluid in it, so I've got to put water, antifreeze in the radiator. Because I had the radiator boiled a few years ago to make sure that it's good and ready to go. So it's all clean. I've got the timing lever all hooked up. I've got the ignition advance, all that stuff all hooked up. Throttle. As you can tell, it's got the three pedals. I think. Boy, I'm gonna have to figure this out again, because it's been such a long time since I've worked on this car that I've forgotten a lot about it. I think the middle is the brake. I've never driven a Model T before. I've driven a Model A. I think I've driven a 28. But those were a lot more conventional. They have accelerator, they have a brake. You go. That's how it works. You actually have a stick shift, because you can shift gears. I think there were 3 speeds, and so I've driven that around, but I've never driven a Model T before. I'm gonna try to get this thing running. I don't know if I can get it running today. I'll probably have to, put the trickle charger on it overnight and really charge up that battery. I've got fuel though. I'm assuming I have spark. It's got a hand crank on it. I've never done that before. I have no idea how to do that. I don't know. I don't, I mean, I don't know. I'll have to figure that out.